Hello everyone and welcome to the Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I'm Michael Voris. The current crisis humanity finds itself in is so multifaceted that normal people can feel overwhelmed just trying to know all the necessary information, much less trying to process it. That's why the church militant team here does so much of the hunting and the gathering and the processing for you. We don't know everything, obviously, but we certainly know a lot, more than most, and we're able to process it all because we screen all of this through the necessary filter of spiritual war, spiritual warfare. There's a certain philosophy a person has to use when looking at the world. Either everything that happens over very long periods of time is purely happenstance, coincidence, or there is an intelligence behind it all, directing various things, ensuring work begun in one generation carries over not just to the next, but to the next 10. Human history builds on itself, and while the process is surrounded somewhat in mystery, it's clear that there does in fact exist a plan. The plan must allow for the foibles of human free will, but even free will choices are not so unpredictable all the time that they couldn't be incorporated into a plan, at least generally. In Christianity, the plan is referred to as salvation history and takes specifically into account the will of God, both His active will and His passive will, as the actions of the diabolical in trying to combat that plan tries to keep stride for stride. Of course, God's outside of time and knows the future, the devil doesn't, so it always ends the way God wants it to. But in the world today, we see vast amounts of evidence of a diabolical plan unfolding, meant to interrupt or thwart salvation history.
Communism is basically diabolical because communism wants to overthrow all of those three godly institutions and institute just a top-down centralized power on earth. You know, communism is not about sharing the wealth. It's about centralizing all wealth and all power in a very, very few hands.
Trevor Loudon is a world-respected author and researcher who has been studying these kinds of issues, both in large and great detail, for many years. Loudon starts with the prototype of whom Saul Alinsky said in the introduction to his infamous work, Rules for Radicals, quote, "Lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer."
Why did Satan leave heaven? Because he'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. This is all about rebellion. This is all about ego. This is about power. They want to dictate. When you've got all the money in the world, what's left to give you a thrill? It's power. It's the ability to dictate, the ability to say, I am God on earth. People tremble to my commands. I can say and do anything I want. I can make people do what I want. I'm basically one of Satan's lieutenants. You know, that's what it's about. It's about power, because if it was about wealth, they would support the free enterprise system. They would support a free, independent America where everybody gets richer and they could get richer too. But they would rather lose money and be powerful than have all the money in the world and have us rich and independent.
Well said. We know from scriptures, Genesis, that Satan has children, spiritual offspring, who do his will. The Son of God explicitly, for example, went right after the Pharisees, saying to them, "Your father is the devil because you do your father's will." Satan doesn't have reign and power over man, not directly, not normally. Obviously, possession is a different matter, but he can't make you do something despite the 1970s joke line, "The devil made me do it." What he can do is influence a person to do evil, give way to temptation, to sin. And if he's going to interrupt salvation history and try to limit it, he must accomplish this through human agency. One of the most important ways he can do this is through the power of the state. So he directly involves himself in the operations of political institutions.
The Republicans, they only want to talk about economics, but a lot of people are more worried. They're worried about gas prices, but they're more worried that their grandson's going to turn up at Thanksgiving wearing a dress.
Right.
You know, they're worried about their borders. They're worried about their faith. They're worried about the social issues that weren't, 30 years ago in America was just about the economy,
Right.
because the Republicans are a little bit better on the economy and the Democrats are a little bit more generous on social spending. And that was the debate. It's gone way beyond that now. Now it's, will the country survive?
Right.
We're going to be swamped by the influx over the southern border? Are my kids going to be turned into brainwashed zombies? Is my grandson going to transition next year? Am I going to be able to keep my guns? Am I going to be able to keep going to church? Am I going to have freedom of speech? Those are the issues that actually worry people now. And so we are feeling that in America.
Well said. Within the political and cultural sphere, there must arise an effort by men of goodwill, embracing ultimate truth, just not like truthful things here and there, but ultimate truth as their motivation to begin to put certain practices in place to curb corruption and the influence of the diabolical.
Lindsey Graham, for instance, stays the senator from South Carolina because a whole bunch of South Carolina Democrats come and vote in the primaries and always keep the conservative opponent out. Same in Alaska with Lisa Murkowski.
Yep.
So that's what we got to, every grassroots Republican has got to close the primaries in their state. That will bring a lot more conservatives into power and a lot less rhinos who will be willing to take on the establishment. We've already made good progress in the House. Now we got to get rid of Mitch McConnell in the Senate. So we got to do that. We got to use these hearings to push them to actually go after Biden, to actually destroy the reputation of the criminal element.
In the end, nothing can be achieved without pushing back, fighting, taking up arms. Not for nothing does St. Paul cast spiritual war in terms of battle. Put on the armor of God, he commands the Ephesians. St. Augustine, one of the greatest fathers of the church, once famously said, "Pray as though everything depended on God. Work as though everything depended on you."
We're not going to get out of this without some divine help here.
Right.
But we've got to start on the road. Would you have bet on the American revolutionaries with their squirrel rifles up against the world's greatest military empire? Would you have, when people are brave and people stand up and people fight, good things happen, miraculous things happen. So we got to get rid of this defeatist attitude. We've got to fight and fight and fight and fight.
Good job, Trevor. If you'd like to watch the entire interview with Trevor Loudon, which we tell you is well worth it, please just click on the provided link below. And if you'd like to read more from this well-respected authority, just go to his website, trevorloudon.com, where you can peruse his impressive list of works dedicated to revealing the diabolical plan on the granular level. God love you. I'm Michael Voris.